Why is it that when something goes wrong, our first instinct is often to look for someone to blame? Why do we feel a strange satisfaction, even relief, in pointing fingers? Why throughout history and into our modern lives do entire groups get demonized for problems they didn't create? There's a name for this pattern. It's called scapegoating. And while it may feel irrational, emotional, or even cruel, it's rooted in deep psychological mechanisms that shape the way humans deal with fear, frustration, and uncertainty. Today on Issues Uncovered, we're exploring the uncomfortable truth behind why we love to hate. How the psychology of scapegoating influences our decisions, our relationships, our politics, and our identities, often without us realizing it. Let's start with the word itself. The term scapegoat comes from an ancient ritual described in the Bible. On the Jewish Day of Atonement, a priest would symbolically place the sins of the people onto a goat, then send that goat out into the wilderness, carrying away the guilt of the community. It was a spiritual act, a physical release of shame and wrongdoing, channeled into something or someone else. Over time, the term evolved. It became less about ceremony and more about blame. Today, a scapegoat is anyone who gets unfairly blamed for the actions or failures of others. But the process is still the same, transferring collective tension onto an individual or group so the majority can feel clean, united, and justified. So why do we do it? At its core, scapegoating is a psychological defense mechanism. When individuals or societies experience stress, failure, or confusion, they look for meaning. They want to explain what went wrong. But when the real cause feels too complex, too invisible, or too painful to face, they shift the blame onto something simpler, someone visible, different, and often powerless. It's a way of managing cognitive dissonance, that uncomfortable mental state when our beliefs and our reality clash. If we believe our group is good, moral, or superior, then failure must be someone else's fault. And so we look outward. We project our inner fears and frustrations onto others. This might be one person. It might be a race, religion, profession, political group, or nationality. Whoever they are, they become the other, and blaming them becomes a shortcut to feeling better. But here's what's even more revealing. Scapegoating doesn't happen randomly. It usually targets people who are different, weaker, or already marginalized. People without power. People who can't fight back. People whose identity makes them easy to label. This tells us something important. Scapegoating isn't just about blame, it's about social control. It reinforces who belongs and who doesn't, who's safe and who's suspect, who deserves protection and who deserves punishment. It builds unity through exclusion. History is filled with examples. In medieval Europe, Jews were often blamed for everything from economic crises to plagues. During the Black Death, entire Jewish communities were massacred, accused of poisoning wells and spreading disease, despite having nothing to do with it. In the U.S., African Americans, immigrants, and indigenous people have been scapegoated repeatedly, blamed for crime, job loss, economic instability, and cultural decline. During World War II, Japanese Americans were imprisoned in internment camps, stripped of their rights, accused of being enemies simply because of their ancestry. After 9/11, Muslims and Arabs became scapegoats for terrorism, facing violence, surveillance, and suspicion, regardless of their beliefs or actions. These are just a few examples among many. But they share a pattern. Fear rises, tension grows, and people look for a villain. The scapegoat emerges, not because they are guilty, but because blaming them feels easier than confronting the truth. And it's not just nations or cultures that do this. Families do it too. In dysfunctional family systems, one child is often labeled the problem. No matter what they do, they're blamed for conflict, tension, or failure. This child becomes the emotional dumping ground for the family's unresolved issues. Therapists call this the identified patient, the person who absorbs the group's dysfunction so everyone else can avoid looking inward. It's heartbreaking, and it's effective until it isn't. Because scapegoating doesn't solve problems, it only hides them. So why is it so powerful? Because scapegoating offers something incredibly seductive: certainty. When life is confusing or painful, blame feels like clarity. It offers a villain, it creates an us versus them story. And stories are how our brains make sense of the world. When things go wrong, our minds naturally look for narrative. We don't just want facts, we want cause and effect. If we can find someone to blame, we feel like we've found the cause. And if we've found the cause, then maybe we can fix it, or at the very least, punish it. There's also a biological and neurological component. Studies show that when we experience anger or moral outrage, the brain's reward centers light up. Blaming others literally feels good. It provides a rush of dopamine, reinforcing the behavior. Anger simplifies things. It gives us a focus. It unites groups around a common enemy. That's why hate can spread so quickly and feel so satisfying even when it's destructive. It's addictive. In today's world, scapegoating has taken on new forms, amplified by technology, media, and algorithms. Social media thrives on outrage. Platforms reward content that provokes strong emotions, especially anger. This creates echo chambers where blame circulates endlessly. One mistake can turn a person into a villain. One accusation, even without evidence, can destroy someone's reputation. We see it in cancel culture, in online mobs, in public shamings. While accountability matters, the line between justice and scapegoating has grown dangerously thin. What begins as a call for responsibility can quickly turn into a collective purge, a way to release tension by destroying someone publicly. And politically, scapegoating remains one of the oldest and most effective tools for gaining power. Leaders throughout history have risen to power by identifying a group to blame. They stir fear, they exaggerate threats, they promise safety in exchange for loyalty. The formula is simple: you are suffering. It's their fault. I will protect you. It's been used by authoritarians and populists alike, from fascist regimes to nationalist movements. And it works because fear narrows our thinking. It makes us tribal. It turns nuance into danger and complexity into threat. We become more likely to believe false information, more willing to support extreme measures, and more easily manipulated by those who claim to have the answers. But here's the truth: scapegoating never truly works, not in the long term. It may satisfy something emotional. It may provide a temporary illusion of control. But it doesn't fix the root cause of pain, confusion, or failure. If anything, it deepens it. Because while everyone is pointing outward, the real problems go unexamined. In personal relationships, blaming someone else may help you avoid guilt, but it doesn't heal. In organizations, blaming one employee may save a reputation, but it doesn't solve dysfunction. And in society, blaming a group may win political points, but it doesn't solve economic inequality, systemic failure, or injustice. So how do we break the cycle? The first step is awareness, recognizing when our instinct to blame is being triggered and asking ourselves why. What fear are we avoiding? What discomfort are we trying to escape? What story are we telling ourselves about who is bad and who is safe? The second step is empathy. Not sympathy, not agreement, but the willingness to see people as human. Scapegoating thrives on dehumanization, reducing people to labels, stereotypes, or enemies. Reclaiming their humanity interrupts the pattern. It opens space for complexity. And third, we have to do the hard work of looking inward. Scapegoating is, at its core, a refusal to face ourselves. It's easier to project pain than to process it. But growth requires self-examination, responsibility, the ability to say, maybe I was wrong. Maybe the truth is more complicated. Maybe no one is to blame and we're all just trying to survive. That takes maturity, it takes honesty, and it takes courage, because the real enemy isn't the scapegoat. It's the fear, the pain, and the uncertainty that made us believe we needed one. So the next time you feel the urge to blame, to demonize, to isolate, to hate, pause. Ask, what am I really reacting to? Who benefits if I choose hate? And what would it look like to respond not with blame, but with curiosity, responsibility, or compassion? Because hate is easy, But healing is hard. And in a world full of conflict, confusion, and competing truths, it's the harder path that usually leads to something real. This has been Issues Uncovered. If today's exploration sparked something in you, subscribe for more content that goes deeper than the headlines, into the psychology, history, and human behavior beneath the surface. Because when we understand what drives us to hate, we take the first step toward learning how to rise above it.